The tea is good. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, JamesBFauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon, December 3rd. Wow, the end of the year. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt channel is also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you guys can find me there on Thursdays for the Savvy and JB show, and for the JB show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Holla at your boy. So good to see all of you here. Please make sure to go ahead and give a like to the stream. This helps me out so that I can reach more people. So thank you so very much for that. Also, if you guys have not, you guys can also subscribe to my Substack at jbfaunt.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write any articles. So you have that there. If you guys would also like to ask me any questions for a video response, you guys can go to QBounty at qbounty.com/JBFaunt. I will give you personalized answers to your questions. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also go there. And it's also part of the holidays. You guys can also gift a membership on Patreon to anybody that you love or anybody that you hate, whichever you actually prefer. And you guys can go to patreon.com/JBFaunt/gift. So good to see all of you here. And as of course, whenever I do have a guest, I would like to make sure that I am very respectful of their time. So a blanket hello to all of you. I will see you all after this segment. And it's so good to have you joining me today. But what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to get into it. Let's get into it. Later in the show, we're going to be talking about above the law. Yes, this has happened. And I'm going to be real with you. I got a lot to say. I know a lot of people got a lot to say. And I'm going to make MAGA as well as liberals angry in this segment. Nobody is going to break free from this because I got some things to say. But first, we're going to be getting into the post-mortem. What the hell happened? And this is why we're going to get into this. And I would love to get into this with none other than campaign manager for the Dr. Jill Stein campaign, former campaign manager, Mr. Jason Call. So good to have you on. I think this is my first time having you on, actually.
No, I've been on your show before. It's been a while.
Yeah. It's been a while. It's been a long time.
But
it's been a long day. Sorry.
Very happy to be with you. And I'll also, want to thank you for the work that you did for the campaign. We were really honored to have you join our press team. And also shout out to Sabby and RBN in general for being supportive of our efforts throughout. We were, really honored, to have your support. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That means a lot. And just to let everybody know, full disclosure, I am a former co-press director for the Jill Stein 2024 campaign. And so, of course, if you see any leanings from me, it's because Jill Stein was the candidate that I was supporting. So, everybody goes, well, you need to be completely objective. There's no absolute objectivity when it comes to any type of media. It's going to be a slant one way or another. My slant happens to be towards people powered and grassroots. So that's how everybody knows where my slant goes. So it's for the proletariat. But also, just one aside. You didn't know I was going to bring this up, but I remember one day you DM'd me and you said, James, what's that book that you're reading? And I said, oh, it's Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. You were like, I'm thinking about picking up that book.
I'm looking at my copy of it right up here I'm in my bedroom right now, and I've got the books that I read that I want to keep close at hand on my nightstand here. And so I'm looking at it right now. Yes.
Yeah. And so you were like, I think I'll pick that book up. And so I was like, all right, yeah, cool. I don't know if I send you a link to purchase it or what.
You did actually in any store, and I didn't want to spend money on Amazon. And I think you said we'll get it from an independent. Here's where you can pick it up from an independent publisher. So I did, yeah.
Nice. Okay. A few months down the line, I'm reading your tweets, and I'm like, Jason sounds a little bit different. This is a little bit more radical in this Jason. And so I was like, did I help in radicalizing Jason a little bit more? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm liking this new look.
Well, you did, and I think, anytime you can read a new perspective, especially, a BIPOC perspective that has had direct, and really historical interactions with trying to build liberation movements and the resistance that that those individuals have met. So, it goes beyond Fred Hampton. There are other players in this, and I will say that I was honored to meet Aaron Dixon, who was one of the first chapter of the Black Panthers outside of Oakland was up here in Seattle, and Aaron Dixon was the captain of that chapter. He founded that chapter, and I did get to meet Aaron, and I got a signed copy of his book, and we got to sit in his living room for a couple of hours and talk with him about the Black Panther movement. And individuals, he had some opinions on other individuals within the movement, who were friends and who were not friends, and all of the dynamics that went along with that, building a really radical liberation movement that you knew was going to get picked apart in any way possible by the authorities. And all of the danger that is fraught with, like personal danger, family danger. Just an amazing conversation with just one of the historical movement leaders. One of the real gems for me coming out of having this opportunity to be a presidential campaign manager is the people that you meet along the way who have that institutional historical knowledge is stunning.
Yeah, man, and I would love to meet more. And I'll be speaking about Joe Biden pardoning Hunter Biden, but what would it be if either one of us can have a conversation with Assata Shakur about her history and her dealings with not just the Black Panther Party, but also liberation movements, and having to, flee the United States from being a political prisoner and having to essentially be in exile in another country. That's got to be a jarring thing, but I would love to see her be able to come home.
Yeah, absolutely. In the context of the Hunter Biden pardon, I want to say, one, I wasn't surprised. I think if had it been for the stuff that Hunter Biden was actually convicted of, which was it was gun and tax related. I think it was politically motivated. I mean, the attacks on Hunter Biden, and I've listened to a lot of lawyers who have said that in most other cases that the prosecutions of Hunter Biden simply wouldn't have moved forward because they are not stuff that the Justice Department typically bothers with, and so it was a very politically motivated. And I think if it was the fact that Joe Biden pardoned his son, you can understand that from a father's perspective. It's a terrible look because it absolutely looks like corruption. But also, I didn't expect it to not happen, even though they said it won't happen. But what really bothers me about it is, there are two things that really bother me about it. One is that the pardon goes all the way back to crimes that may have been committed, all the way back to 2014, which tells me Hunter Biden was involved in some shady dealings and some corruption around Ukraine. I don't want to get into what that might have been, but I think that is very concerning. And the second thing is, because I'm not a fan of the carceral system, right? I'm an abolitionist when it comes right down to it. I want to see the end of our carceral state. And so to that degree, the fact that we have tens of thousands of people sitting in, mostly state prisons, not federal prisons, state prisons on nonviolent drug charges. Let's let all those people go. and get back to their lives. And please, let's pay them some restitution for just the abomination that has been the war on drugs in this country, and any number of other things that people simply do not need to be languishing in prison over. I think that's the thing that really bothers me about this, is when you're rich and you're powerful and your father's the president, you get a pardon, and the average person that does not have access to the system in that way has their lives ruined in jail. And I think that's the thing that bothers me the most about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Especially, and I'll be getting more into it. It's just the hypocrisy of it all.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest issues that I have, especially with the pardoning. And so, yeah, I'll be getting deeper into it a little bit later, but it is quite interesting how a lot of people who are part of the MAGA crowd are now up in arms about it too.
Right. And this is just the fundamental dysfunction of team sports politics in America. When and you see it with the Democrats all the time, when their side does it bad, when our side does it, maybe not necessarily good, but at least we can ignore it and give it a pass, And so there's no standard of consistency. Everything is politicized. And this is when you really have to understand that the system works for the rich and powerful, and it simply does not work for 80% of the country.
Yeah, definitely.
And the legal system in particular.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially those of us who are the bottom 10%, like people like myself and whatnot. But yeah, you're absolutely correct about that. But I do want to get into some of the questions that I had for you. And one of my first questions that I had, especially in post-mortem, is like, I'd like to get your thoughts on the election results from the Stein campaign and what wins and challenges you thought happened and what lessons you think the Greens could learn from.
Well, we're still doing our postmortem in the campaign. We're still wrapping up the campaign. I'm still spending a lot of my time making sure that we get our, official reports filed and vendors paid and all of that stuff. So we're still winding down the campaign. And we are also working on, sort of what's next for the team. But an analysis, and I think, Jill said it, on election night. When we were in Dearborn, the whole team, almost the whole team. We wish she could have been with us, but most of the team was in Dearborn for election night, and we had rented a hall, and we didn't even watch the election returns. Who won the election was not even particularly important. We were interested in what our vote totals were, but the campaign was massively suppressed. The DNC for the first time went after a third party because they saw us as a legitimate threat. Now, obviously, in terms of the vote totals, we weren't nearly the threat that they might have thought we were, or that we might have thought we were. But I think the important thing, the win for us, is that we stayed on message through the entire campaign, on our principles, that we did the best. And so for people who don't know, we were hampered along the way from the very beginning in terms of actually getting on the ballot. We didn't make the cut in New York because they had tripled the vote totals between 2020, or the signature requirement between 2020 and 2024. They tripled the signature requirement. And so not only the campaign, but the Green Party of New York we did not plan ahead enough. And I want to be very honest, we were this came up in Chicago at the DNC, when we were there. Dissidents interviewed Jill, and the question was, well, how come you didn't get on the ballot in New York? Could you have done better in New York? Yeah, hindsight's 2020. We could have done better in New York. I wish we had planned, a couple of months in advance. But the nature of campaigns is you're starting small. You work on things, you reprioritize things as they come to you. We thought We were going to do okay in New York. We thought we were going to make the minimum, but people did not catch on to the campaign. If you remember, Jill and we had to have all our signatures in by the end of May, but we didn't. The campaign didn't really start picking up until like the first to second week of May in terms of New York. And that was only really because Jill and I had gotten ourselves arrested in St. Louis, and we'd gotten a lot of press. And then people started to take note. Oh, these people are serious about resistance for Palestine. So, I wish groundwork had been done there. Same thing in Illinois. I wish more groundwork had been done. So as a post-mortem, we're certainly looking at what needs to happen better next time in those states. Illinois, people might not know that Illinois passed a law this year that it starts impacting getting on the ballot, making it harder to get on the ballot in Illinois next year. Illinois was already one of the hardest states to get on the ballot in. So these are Democrat. I want people to understand New York and Illinois are fully democratically controlled state legislatures, and they make the rules on how to get on the ballot. And this is the Democratic Party pushing to keep third parties off the ballot in, a couple of our most populous states. So we will approach things a lot more strategically next time around. I bring up the thing with due dissidence because I talked to them in Chicago, and I said, listen, I don't want you or people out there to think that we think what happened in New York was acceptable. It was what it was. We learned from it. We could have done better. And I think there's got to be an accountability there to say, yeah, we could have done better in New York. Illinois was a little bit different of a story in terms of our challenges in getting on the ballot. In Indiana, for instance, we got 61,000 signatures, but the validity rate of those signatures was less than 40%, which is another, when you talk about what are the challenges for multiple tens of thousands of signatures to get on the ballot for a grassroots campaign, you've either got to get the volunteers on the ground to get them, or you've got to pay for people to go get those signatures for you. And we paid for those signatures in Indiana. And we thought that 61,000 would clear as a 37,000 signature requirement. We thought the 61,000 that we turned in would be enough, and it wasn't enough. So that just gives you an idea of the state of signature gathering right now is to get on the ballot. Also in New York, they had some rules around signature gathering that you can't sign for more than one person. So as RFK is out there getting signatures, and he can pay top dollar for those signature gatherers because he spent over $1 million in New York. We only spent a couple of $100,000 in New York. And it was a very competitive environment. And the paid firms to get on the ballot in New York simply weren't available to us. And then a couple of them ended up being sort of DNC, we think kind of DNC ops that took our money, said they would deliver, and then didn't deliver. So, in retrospect, things that we could have done differently. Also, in retrospect, a lot of things that were just flat out of our control. I will say the biggest thing that is a challenge for a third party is fundraising. The people that we are appealing to are typically working class and simply don't have a lot of money. And the Democrats who are going to raise, if you can think about this, in 3 months, Kamala Harris's campaign raised over $1 billion. And for the entirety of our campaign, we raised under 3 million. So we're essentially getting outspent 1,000 to 1. And unless people are willing to invest time and money, like actual as an individual, you're committed to breaking the duopoly, it's going to be an investment in time and money, and everybody has to pitch in. If we could have gotten that message out sooner to build fundraising, that certainly would have helped. But, when you're outspent, I think if you're outspent 50 to 1, you can still be competitive. If you're outspent 1,000 to 1, much, much less so.
Well, that really speaks to the name recognition. Would you also say, this is just a follow-up question, would you say that part of that that depression of fundraising as well as getting the word out is really just partly due, and maybe this may be harsh of me, but I really do think that the independent media, and by independent media, I'm talking about the TYTs, the Majority Reports, all these different channels that claim to be independent. I feel like they also kind of dropped the ball, because they could have had you on, they could have had Joe on and Butch on, and they could have had them make the case instead of them keeping them off and making the case for a Kamala Harris.
Yeah, we weren't going to get any help from, like, I think the closest we got is, like, we got Jill was on The Hill Rising with Jessica Burbank, and Jessica was supportive, and initially Crystal and Kyle were supportive, and then as so, but they were very anti-Biden. But as soon as Biden dropped and it was Harris, Crystal and Kyle both really weren't interested anymore, and we're like, oh good, now the Democrats have a more viable candidate that isn't a decrepit warmonger, although obviously that wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean, my question would be to Crystal and Kyle is like, I mean, how does that egg on your face taste now? Because that's honestly my biggest question. Because the thing is, like, you were literally standing behind somebody who really could have been, at the very least could have got her to 5%. But instead, you guys stood behind Kamala Harris as soon as she came in. And it feels like almost like a financial thing to do. It's like, okay, we're going to go with this because it will grow our numbers, versus doing the right thing to do. And the policy heavy thing to do is to go with somebody who you actually align with more, because they keep saying, oh, it's about strategy. And I'm like, how does that strategy work out for you?
Our strategy was simply, we're not going to vote for genocide. Our strategy was, and it's why we made Gaza really the pinnacle policy point right now in this moment, is that you cannot vote for genocide, and we said throughout, because obviously we're clearly not Trump supporters, but that's the message the DNC wanted to run with, was that we were either doing this for Trump, or that our presence alone was essentially a vote for Trump. Us being on the ballot is a vote for Trump. You know how that goes. And our position really was that re-electing genocide, which is what you're doing if you are electing Kamala Harris or re-electing the Democrats, is actually worse than the potential of Trump being back in office. Obviously, there are many, many terrible things about the Trump administration, but the precedent set by saying, hey, these folks are doing genocide, and we didn't think that was a red line. That's why we were extremely honored to be in coalition with the Abandon Biden / Abandon Harris movement, who we are still in coalition with right now to build whatever comes next for the Green Party and the movement in general. It's just an absolutely terrible precedent to set. And as Sami Hamdi said, who is the British Muslim who gives really impassioned assessments of the situation in Gaza, he said, we Muslims, and he's saying this as somebody who's British, but worldwide, what happens with America affects people worldwide. We survived 4 years of Trump. 200,000 Palestinians did not survive 4 years of Joe Biden. So, this was really our assessment. And, the Biden administration still is doubling down, and it's disgusting, and it's pathetic, and it's craven to see the Biden administration 2 weeks before the election say, 30 days out, we will hold Israel accountable if they do not like, motherfuckers, do it now. Do it now.
Yeah.
So, and that was our message. Like, throughout this, it was the Democrats, if they are so concerned about our presence in this election, and they feel like they have lost voters, their analysis must be that they have lost voters because of genocide, then the way you get those voters back is not having us drop out. It's stopping the genocide, right? That's the only thing. And, that's what we felt our pressure was in the election, specifically regarding the genocide, is if they want us dropping out does not give them a reason to stop the genocide. Us staying in might.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. My next question is, based on what you observed on the ground, did you expect a win from Harris or Trump?
I want to say that our feeling was that Trump was probably going to win. Going into the election, with Kamala Harris not polling, not beating Trump in any of the swing states, I think that was really the marker right there, that there was no way she could win if she can't win, Pennsylvania or Georgia. And I think in the end, didn't she lose every single swing state? Maybe, I don't remember. I have to look at the map and
she lost all swing states.
Yeah, I mean, and turned out that our the all of the left campaigns, us and PSL and Cornel West, adding up all of those votes, she still loses. If all of those votes go to Harris, she still loses. So there's no this loss is 100% on the Democrats, and it's really par for the course that their top level pundits come out of it and start saying, well, it's because we were too far left. And I was like, oh my God, you guys have dropped the ball immediately again. It's pathetic. The Democrats are pathetic. And my mission right now is, just as a personal thing, as somebody who's been an activist for 35 years, we need to see an end to the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party holds the space where an actual opposition to fascism party should be. And we all know the Democrats are not opposition to fascism. If they're not openly fascist themselves, which they are in many cases, then their lack of resistance to fascism, it really paves the way to that fascism. So we need an opposition party. The Democrats are not it. They're never going to be it. And so I just encourage everybody who still feels like the Democratic Party is the answer. You got to flush that down the toilet. You got to get out. The real question then is, what is the progressive / working class / peace movement, climate movement, knowing that Democrats are not going to solve any of these problems? How do we come together to build that opposition for the future? And that's something that Jill and the campaign staff and I and a lot of the partners that we have had in coalition over the course of the year, that's what we are working on right now. Because what we have on our plate right now is a very serious, closer than ever before, possibility of nuclear war. And we have to do something to make people aware of how dangerous the situation is right now. And the people in charge, and it really doesn't matter what administration, although I will say, in terms of hopefully getting some kind of peace deal worked out with Russia, I actually have more confidence in the Trump administration to do something along those lines than I do the Biden administration. Biden administration just wants to double down on funding Ukraine and double down on funding Israel. They're certainly not the answer. So as distasteful as the Trump administration is, I hope they can pull some kind of peace agreement out. I mean, you saw the EU, some of the leaders of the EU said just a day or two, hey, Ukraine may have to make some concessions on territory here. And I think those of us who have followed this for the last 2 years have said, God, it's coming up on 3 years now, have said, in the end, the boundaries that existed in February of 2022 may not be the boundaries in February 2025. I mean, people have to understand that the breakup of the Soviet Union was not particularly well thought out, and the boundaries that were in place are essentially boundaries that were created by Vladimir Lenin, over 100 years ago. So, here's our opinion, and this is kind of the direction of things that we're working on right now. Nothing is worth nuclear war. And we've been listening to Scott Ritter's analysis and Danny Haiphong, and Larry Wilkerson, and all these Jeff Sachs, all these people are saying we are closer now to nuclear war than we were in 1961, when there was the Bay of Pigs conflict, where the people's fingers were literally on the buttons to send the missiles flying. So it's a very precarious situation. Once missiles start flying in a nuclear fashion here, it's basically over for humanity, and we've got to do whatever we can to stop that right now. And this was another message that Jill was very clear on throughout the campaign, was nuclear war ends us all. And we're so close. I live in, about 40 miles north of Seattle. And I am within 50 miles, actually closer, 30 miles, of one of the largest nuclear stockpiles in the entire world. We have multiple military facilities here. This is a very strategic location in terms of United States defense. Where I live is a top target. If bombs start flying, one is coming my way, and I am not kidding that I am looking at getting out right now. I'm looking at getting out of this area, because I don't think that the Pacific Northwest is a safe place to be right now. Not until cooler heads prevail, where it's really, really precarious.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very hairy situation, especially with the escalations of the intercontinental ballistic missiles being allowed and to be shot into Russia from Ukraine. It's a trying situation for many of us, especially. And I remember Scott Ritter being on Savvy Sabs talking about, we just need to come together and stop this now. Put differences to the side, because you can't argue these differences if the world is gone. So.
And one of the things that Scott Ritter says that I think is really important, and also, again, going back to why Jill was a better candidate, is that back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, that while the Cold War was ongoing, there were at least talks between the leaders, right? The leaders of the countries were able to sit down at negotiating tables. And the Biden administration absolutely refuses to engage on a diplomatic level with the Russians. And I don't know how you move forward with even the potential of world peace if you can't sit at the table with somebody and talk about what a peace agreement might look like. So we have, and to that extent, my feeling is that the only adult in the room right now is that people will freak out to hear this, because the Democratic Party will go, "Oh, look, Putin puppet." No, not at all. This is like anti-nuclear war. Let's not have a nuclear war here. And I feel like Vladimir Putin is really the only adult in the room at this point, because with these new missiles he has said, "Look, I'm not. These are not nuclear. We've done a couple of test fires of them. You can see that they're not nuclear. The tracking on them says that they're not nuclear. They would still be devastating, but they're not nuclear. Don't push us towards nuclear. We do not want a nuclear conflict." Where I feel like our leaders, our strategists, are starting, and you see this in the New York Times or the Washington Post, these articles that say, "Oh, well, what would a nuclear war look like?" I mean, my God, are you guys prepping us for the potential of nuclear war? You are not being adults right now. There is no post-nuclear war. Don't even think about human society post-nuclear war. It's all fucking over. So, again, it gives me no pleasure to say that I think that Vladimir Putin might be the only adult in the room at this point. And he's not great. So
yeah, Yeah, it's scary nonetheless.
Yeah.
My next question is going back to the Democratic Party. Is what is your thoughts about many Democratic pundits and politicians coming out and saying that they've had problems with Harris during, running after the election? So of course you had some reservations by people like James Carville, Bernie Sanders. What are your thoughts about that? It's like, is it a day late and a dollar short, or is it kind of hindsight?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, of course, and they don't want to be critical. They don't want to be critical while they're running a race, and I understand that. But this really is the problem with very sort of insular, top-down party politics. Is the leaders of the party thought it would be quite all right to not have a primary and to transition straight from Biden to Harris and essentially crown her the way they wanted to do with Hillary Clinton in 2016. And there were so many parallels with Hillary Clinton in 2016. The biggest one being, like, nobody likes Kamala Harris. I mean, why would you run another historically unpopular candidate? Do you not learn your lesson? Now, the flip side of that is, I don't know who the Democrats would have picked. I don't think Pete Buttigieg would have done any better. I don't think Gavin Newsom would have done any better. I mean, Gavin Newsom's got a terrible track record in California, although he may have done better than Kamala Harris. Like, in terms of how you appeal to the working class and progressives, I don't see anybody on the bench for the Democrats who would be better than Kamala Harris, and she's terrible. So I think,
well, what about Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson? I mean, weren't they in the Democratic primary? Wasn't there supposed to be a Democratic primary?
There were, and I don't know that either of them are great candidates as well. And I say that having worked for Marianne. I didn't work for her for very long. And I think, I'll say this: if somebody put a gun to my head and said vote for Marianne or vote for Kamala Harris, I'd vote for Marianne. But I still don't think that she was a particularly great candidate. Although, I mean, she's total Zionist. And as much as you say, I feel for the suffering of the Palestinian people, and yet the Israel, you're 100% in support of Israel. So anyway, I don't think there were any great Democratic Party candidates. Listen, the accomplishments of the Biden administration over the last 4 years were few and far between. And I don't think, I think the landmark legislation for the Biden administration was the Infrastructure Act, which they sold as being great for climate, and you read the bill and it's a fossil fuels first bill. So I think people realize that the Democrats, I mean, this has to be the analysis, is people have to realize the Democrats are the other party of billionaires. I often say that the only promise Joe Biden kept was the one he made to his donors behind closed doors, which was nothing will fundamentally change. And it hasn't. Billionaires have tripled their wealth and the working class has gotten poorer, and poverty has grown, and child poverty has grown. And we still don't have improvements to our healthcare system. Homelessness is growing. Home affordability is, like, there was an article that just came out the other day that said the average age, or was it the median? I don't remember, but either way, it's bad. The average age of a first-time home buyer in the U.S. is 56 years old. And I'm like, Jesus, that's horrible, because I know when I graduated, 1989, the prospects for buying a home was like, you could buy your home by the time you were 30, which is what I did. I bought my first home in, I think I was 29 years old, in 1999. And the economy is so much worse 25 years later for the average person. And then the fear mongering around Project 2025 really wore thin, because go back to 1980 when Ronald Reagan merged the Republican Party with the moral majority, which were the Christian nationalists.
Yeah.
And that was with the Heritage Foundation. That was the roots of Project 2025. So for 45 years, the elements of Project 2025 have been on the table, and the Democratic Party has done nothing except move us closer to the goals of Project 2025. They are not a resistance party. They're not an opposition party. So the fear mongering on Project 2025 is like, look, when you guys have power, you don't do anything with it. So how are we to take you seriously about Project 2025?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to add to your point, we're going to talk about Project 2025, which is really just a project from the Heritage Foundation. If we're going to resist everything from the Heritage Foundation, then why did everybody clap their hands when President Barack Obama introduced the Affordable Care Act, which originally was Romney Care, which was a idea from the Heritage Foundation? So the Heritage Foundation ideas are literally being implemented by the Democratic Party as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you've got a war criminal visiting Congress, like literally, somebody that you are arming and funding to slaughter Palestinians comes and visits Congress, and the guy gets a standing ovation throughout from, virtually everybody. In fact, everybody in attendance except Rashida Tlaib, who sat there and held her sign, which, good on her for doing that. But everybody gave this guy a standing ovation for an entire fucking hour. It was, and I think, that in itself was enough to have a lot of people who may have voted for the Democrats just stay home. And I think that's really what happened in the election, is that people who might have voted for the Democratic Party are so fed up with them that they said, I'm just not even going to bother voting.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, maybe this may be a little bit more harsher of me, but I don't think Rashida Tlaib went far enough.
Oh, I don't think so either. I'm saying for that one instance where she was the lone voice of resistance while Netanyahu was addressing Congress, that she sat there and endured that. But no, I mean, she feels like her home is in the Democratic Party, and that's that. We did try and find a way to do outreach to her and have a conversation, but we were never, it's like, we knew people who knew people. But we were never able to really make that connection with Rashida Tlaib, and we would have encouraged her openly, drop the Democrats and join us. That we did with the mayor of Dearborn, Abdullah Hammoud. We did have conversations early on with his office and offered him the vice presidency. Hey, you want to do this? Our stand is Gaza right now. And he would have done it had he been eligible, but he was not old enough, so we didn't, there was sort of a constitutional crisis on that. But
gotcha. Understood. Well, Thank you very much for that additional information. I just want to get to the next question as well. So based on the Pod Save America interview with the Harris campaign former staff, I would like to get what you have done differently. But first, I would want to get into just your reaction to this. Here is one of the campaign staff speaking with Pod Save America about their rationale. This says the Harris campaign advisor, Steph Cutter, explains why Kamala Harris was unwilling to differentiate herself from Joe Biden on policy. So let's get into this, and then I'll get your reaction on the other side.
On the Biden question, we, of course, got that everywhere we went. And we knew what the data was. We knew we had to show her as her own person and point to the future and not try to rehash the past. She also felt that she was part of the administration. And unless we said something like, well, I would have handled the border completely differently, we were never going to satisfy anybody. We were trying to tell a story and give the impression that she was different without pointing to a specific issue.
Can I ask this, why not a specific issue? Is this something she was unwilling to do? I mean, you worried it would feel disingenuous?
She felt like she was part of the administration. So why should she look back and cherry pick some things that she would have done differently when she was part of it? She had tremendous loyalty to President Biden. You've been on plenty of campaigns. Imagine if we said, well, we would have taken this approach on the border. Imagine the round of stories coming out after that of people saying, well, she never said that in the meeting, or what meeting when she said this, or I remember when she did that. And it wasn't going to give us what we needed, because it wouldn't be a clean break. It would be, days upon days in a limited time window that we had of dealing of who, what, when, where. So the best we could do, and the most that she felt comfortable with, was saying, like, look, vice presidents never break with their presidents. The only time in recent memory is when Pence broke with Trump after Trump stormed the Capitol.
They call that the murder exemption.
That's
If the president tries to murder you, you can break. Yes.
If you are, ripping up the Constitution, trying to overturn an election, people die, then you could break with your president.
Your thoughts on that?
Well, they're not wrong. I don't think she's wrong about anything she said there, but that is the fundamental pitfall of having the vice president of the current president be your nominee, because everything that happens is you're part of that team. So I think what I really would have wanted out of Kamala Harris to distinguish herself is for her to say, to her to put pressure on the Biden administration to stop genocide. And she wasn't going to do that. She met with Netanyahu, and she said she, full support of Israel, and there wasn't anything that she was openly going to do. I mean, these mealy mouth words about, I care about the suffering of the Palestinians. Like, nobody buys that unless you're willing to openly say our administration is not on the right path. And she wasn't willing to do that, and she's right about that. I mean, I think that's an honest statement to say, hey, I have loyalty to my president. We've made all of these decisions together. What is interesting to me is that the campaign staff knew, if we are going to win this race, we have to distinguish you from this president. We literally pulled this president off of the post because we knew he was a bad choice and was going to lose. And so unless we distinguish you in some way, we are also going to lose. And that was the dilemma they were presented with. They knew that. And so, I mean, what this lady Cutter here is saying is that we were trying to find some way to fool the American people that you were going to be different than president. And I do want to say, in a brief moment of honesty, that Kamala Harris was probably like, I'm not going to be different than the president, though. I take responsibility and ownership for what the president has done because I've been part of it. All right, good on you. You're going to lose. And so why do the Democrats put this vice president in, this terrible president that they have to pull off, and then they put his VP in, thinking that something is going to be, I think it was a horrible strategic move for the Democratic Party to run Kamala Harris. For the reasons that Steph Cutter there had identified.
Do you think that Kamala Harris underestimates her unpopular position in the American voters' mind?
I don't know, because all these people are completely fucking delusional. So it's all an echo chamber for them. So I really don't know. Maybe she has a sense of how unpopular she is, but I don't know that the Democratic Party as a whole has a sense of how unpopular it is. They are very much clouded by where their funding comes from. And I think one of the interesting things that came out of this was, sort of an analysis, which I have had for a long time, because I was on and for people who don't know, I'm a former Democrat. I was on the Washington State Democrat Central Committee for 4 years as part of sort of the Bernie wing. And when I got into that space and saw how, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is completely suppressed within the party by the DNC at the state party level, which filters down into the local party level, you realize there's no avenue for progressive wins within the Democratic Party. So seeing that my analysis coming out of that was, with the state parties like the DNC and the state parties are basically money laundering, because they shuffle money between candidates and their preferred candidates just constantly. So if you are a candidate who says, well, I'm not taking any corporate money, but you are taking money from other candidates, or you're taking money from the state party, that's corporate money filtering into that. There's no Democratic candidate who can really say, my funding is clean if they are taking that kind of money, which all of the preferred candidates were doing. But when I realized that there was no accountability mechanism within the Democratic Party, like, the voting or the rank and file Democrats who had gotten themselves involved organizationally with the Democratic had absolutely zero power, unless you do a complete takeover of the Democratic Party, which is, even then you can't do a whole lot about the executive board coming at the state level. Anyway, you realize that the whole Democratic Party is a big money laundering operation for corporate cash, getting to their preferred candidates. And you're like, man, this thing is just a joke. There's going to be no accountability. I got to get out of here. My experience at the top levels of the state party really solidified my understanding of how the Democratic Party was a complete dead end for the progressive movement.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Because I mean, it's like you saw how the sausage was made, and then you were like, "Oh, really?"
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. So let me get into this. I also wanted to get into this from David Plouffe. He was also part of the Obama campaign as well. I just want to get your raw take on what he says here.
It's always worth reminding people, it's really hard for Democrats to win battleground states. Let's look at Pennsylvania. 25% of the electorate is liberal, roughly. 34% is conservative. By the way, in most battleground states, that conservative number is over 40. So in every battleground state, there's more conservative than liberals. So in Pennsylvania, if X is to believe, Trump won conservatives 91.8, Harris won liberals 93.6. Moderates, Harris won 56.43, but you kind of got to win 60% of them, right? For Democrats to win battleground states, it is a false choice. You want to maximize your base, of course. And that was a place where we spent enormous time, a lot of resources. That's critical. And obviously, I think in Milwaukee, just to use that as an example, we hit our turnout targets, fell a little bit short in Philly and Detroit. So that's not good. That's part of the equation. You've got to couple that with dominating in the middle, not just winning it a little. We have to dominate the moderate vote. And I think as we look ahead to 26 and 28, particularly where you have seen drift amongst non-college voters generally, particularly those of color specifically, we obviously have to get some of that back. We can't afford any more erosion there. The math just doesn't fucking work.
So dominate the middle, get the moderates. Is that a winning strategy to you, Jason?
So here's the thing: is I don't think that they know what moderates want. I think what the real political analysis is that the middle is people who want healthcare and housing and to not go to war and to have college education be affordable and to not have to work 3 jobs to pay rent. That's the middle. And that is a nonpartisan middle. That is the left, that is the right, that is young people, that is old people. And what the Democrats are going to do going into 26 and 28 is they are not going to change any of their policy positions, and they're going to lose again because as I don't know what the Republicans are going to do, and maybe the Republicans are going to do some horribly distasteful stuff that is going to cause them to lose the election. Maybe they will. Maybe that's it. Maybe, this is the ping pong effect, is like, the Republicans, Biden ran a terrible 4 years, or Trump ran a terrible 4 years. So we get Biden. Biden runs a terrible 4 years. So we get Trump again. Trump's going to run a terrible 4 years. And so we'll get a Democrat again. The thing is, it's an attrition of voters. Like, they're not growing their voter base. If they want to grow their voter base, start doing the things that we in the Green Party have said for decades, you should be doing. It was what Bernie Sanders said in 2016 and again in 2020. People want to be secure. They want to be economically secure. They want to have healthcare. They want to have housing, pass Medicare for all, pass guaranteed housing, pass a federal jobs guarantee. Cancel student debt. The answer to this is very simple. You're just not going to get it out of the Democratic Party. There's no wake up moment for the Democratic Party. Pluff right there saying we need to go for moderates. I don't even know what he's talking about when he's trying to identify moderates. And that's why I say the actual moderate positions are that the government works for everybody. And the Democrats still don't want to accept that. They want the government to work for billionaires first. And they're going to lose again if that's the best that they can do. They got it. It's got to be about policy.
Yeah, the thing is that the Overton window has moved so far to the right that moderates would be somebody who's like Ronald Reagan. Like that to me,
and that's true. But a lot of this moderate stuff, whether you're left wing or you're moderate or you're right wing, has to do with those wedge issues. Let's call them wedge issues. Let's call it guns and abortion, and maybe some foreign policy stuff. I'm not even sure that foreign policy gets into that. I think if you went to common sense stuff, again, like we were promoting for the Green Party, I think you could win the majority of voters. We've been very propagandized that the system can only accommodate two parties, and in that two-party system, you end up basically with the two parties working for the same team. They're working for the corporate team. They're working for the billionaires. But people have been so propagandized and so used to, and also, media blackouts, et cetera. If people were like, this is what we said, if Jill had gotten on a debate stage with Trump and Harris, she would have cleaned their clocks. It would have been no contest. People were like, oh my God, how come we don't hear this stuff out of politicians? Why, if you listen to Jill on the free and equal debates, and she did the free and equal debates 3 times, it was, there was one in February, there was one in July, and then there was another one in October. And each time, she gets presented with a question, she answers, she gives an honest assessment of the situation, and it all comes down to sound policy that works for everybody. Democrats don't want that. They want policy that works for billionaires first, because that's who pays their bills. So this is why the Democrat, the party system, like your sort of conventional wisdom on, my cat's about to walk on my keyboard here. The conventional wisdom around running campaigns is that all of these consultants get a fat paycheck. And it just gets recycled, so the same people can keep collecting their paychecks regardless of who wins or who loses the actual race. And in a system like that, the losers are the American people. And this is the message that we were trying to present, is that there are sound policies that we can pass, that the American people want, but neither major parties are going to pass them, because that's not who they're working for.
Yeah. Just to let you know, I am over time. I wonder if I have time for the last 3 questions. Do you have time?
Yeah, it's entirely up to you. I'm fine with it.
Okay, all right. So I just want to make sure I get through these questions as well, but I wanted to be respectful of your time. But your thoughts on Trump's cabinet appointments? I wanted to really get into that too, because it's like a merry band of misfits. I'm looking at them.
I was a high school teacher for sorry, my camera's fuzzed out here. I don't know why. I was a high school teacher for almost 20 years. So I have deep ties to the education system. I think Betsy DeVos was a terrible education department secretary from Trump's first administration. Linda McMahon's going to be a terrible education department. But, you know, I mean, the state of public education is somewhat in shambles anyway, because public education doesn't get funded. So I almost want to say, you know, unless the Democrats had plans to substantially fund education at the federal level better, because a lot of, you know, the majority of funding for public education it comes from state and local taxes, property taxes. Unless we find a better mechanism to fund public education, I'm not sure that the Democrats are going to do any better for education. But, you know, obviously somebody who has had zero experience in education is not a great pick. It's very ideological. I do have an interest in what's his name, Desh Patel, because he has said, and actually let me, if you can bring up Desh Patel there as I'm looking at this. And I have not looked at all of these picks. I really haven't. Pam Bondi, I really don't know what to say about her.
The funny part about Pam Bondi is that she was speaking with Trump recently. And one of the things that she said that what I found to be interesting was she was saying about taking guns away from people who she deemed as mentally ill or who have mental illness. And I'm like, okay, a lot of times people talk about that. But my question is, who do you signify as mentally ill? Because mental illness can come many different forms. People who with depression, people with anxiety, some people who may have different types of mental conditions, whether temporary or permanent. And the question is, who are you going to say has a mental illness? People can say people who are trans are mentally ill.
That has been the big argument around red flag laws right from the start. You know, okay, what constitutes an actual red flag, and poses an actual danger to themselves or to society. And I think a lot of the things that we want to say are red flags, like white supremacy. Well, shit, we give them guns and badges. So, you know, I don't have a whole lot to say about Pam Bondi. What I do have an interest in is Trump going to go after large corporations for antitrust issues? If he is, I think that's a good thing. Who was it that Will Stancil, some talking head on Twitter, I don't know why he's important, but apparently he is, was flipping out that Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal had said that they were willing to work with the Trump administration on antitrust issues. And I was like, all right, that's fine. And Will Stancil apparently said that nobody should be working with the Trump administration on anything. And I'm like, all right, so you want you got to pick and choose. Like we can't have a government at a complete standstill. There are issues that can be worked on, and we should work on those issues, even if you don't like Trump. But, you know, I don't think it's good for the Democratic Party to, I remember back in 2009 that Mitch McConnell had said with the incoming Obama administration that our goal is to make him a one-term president by making sure essentially that he doesn't get to pass any legislation. And I don't think that is necessarily a helpful attitude for the Democrats to take. I mean, you've got to find places where you can work and get good things passed. I don't know what good things those are, but antitrust legislation seems to be a good direction. If Trump is out there saying, hey, I'm going to find a way to peace with Russia, I'm going to find a way to peace in the Middle East. We don't hear the Biden administration talking about those things at all. Biden administration has simply said, we're going to back Israel all the way. And I know Trump has said that shit about Israel also. But there has been no talk. Hello. There's been no talk about ceasefires within the Biden administration, which is absolutely crazy. So if Trump wants to talk about a pathway to ceasefire, what choice do we have at this point than to see what that turns into? Same with the antitrust legislation. there was another thing I wanted to say about I can't remember what it is right now, but you know, going into it with an attitude of we're going to block everything that Trump does because we don't want him to have any wins at all. I think that's a very unhealthy attitude. And you know, I'd rather see what we could possibly get out of this situation. Either way, you know, Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, you know, I don't know. Our Secretary of State right now is a genocidal maniac. So could you get worse than a genocidal maniac? I don't know. Do we replace him with another genocidal maniac? I'm yet to see, you know, how bad Rubio can possibly be. I know he's not great. But this is the thing that we're faced with is like, all right, we've got a new administration. Hopefully we get the best out of it that we possibly can. Hopefully we can minimize whatever disasters may be in the offing. You know, who knows? It's a fucking crapshoot, right?
Yeah. I mean, and you brought up Desh Patel. One of the things that I'm thinking of is, does he want to get revenge on the FBI for what they did to Trump back in 2022? I think it was. Or was it 2023 when they did a raid on his house? My question is, like, if you want to dismantle the FBI, I'm not mad at you because, you know, looking at the Black radical tradition of what they've done to Black radicals, especially to people who are on the left in this country, I'm no fan of the FBI. But the thing is that it's always going to be what good for the goose is good for the gander. So I've looked at the Trump administration and they're going to use the FBI for their own ends. You know, it's not going to be, well, we see the damage and how bad the FBI could be utilized. And so we're just going to put them away. I honestly do think that Trump is going to do just the right-wing version, not even a right-wing version, but just their side version of, you know, going after the political people that they want to go after.
I'm sure. I mean, that I really don't have any doubt about that at all. And I want to note Colin's comment in the chat about the HHS. Yeah, I think RFK is probably going to be a disastrous pick for HHS. You know, we support vaccine science. I don't think I support vaccine mandates, but I think a lot of that has to do with public education, you know, and I think the thing about mandates is, can we mandate somebody to take an injection, have something stuck into their body? I have very serious concerns about bodily autonomy in that case, because honestly, you know, that has mission creep there when it comes to abortion. And so I would protect bodily autonomy on abortion rights, and I would protect bodily autonomy on getting a vaccine. But I also would say that if if the government has determined that you should take a vaccine and you don't take it, then, you know, I'm not saying that there couldn't or shouldn't be some consequences around that. I think the vaccine issue has been very politicized. I think the Biden administration did a terrible job of instilling public confidence, but that all goes back to corporate ownership of the pharmaceutical industry. And if we had a pharmaceutical industry that was nationalized and people had confidence that it was working in the best interest of the public and not working in the best interest of shareholders, then, you know, this is one of the reasons I believe that we should have a healthcare system that is completely free and clear of anything other than public ownership and public decision making on what. When I say public, I don't mean like everybody gets a voice, but, you know, representatively, it is publicly owned. So it's yeah, and I think that RFK has, and RFK is somebody that I listened to 20 years ago when he was doing Ring of Fire with Mike Papantonio as an environmental lawyer, and he was very into environmental cleanup and making sure corporations were held accountable for pollution. And I think that there are some elements of that might be good in terms of eliminating corporate corruption in the healthcare system. and on the other hand, I think he is very ideologically driven on some things that have the potential to be real disaster. So, it's a mixed bag there.
Yeah, it is true, and it's just like one of my friends and comrades is a physician, and she was telling me about how, as far as vaccines are concerned, I'm not going to get too much into it, but if the Biden administration had handled it better, especially in regards to paying people to stay home, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Making sure that they didn't have to, making sure that their rent was canceled, or their mortgage was canceled, or their car notes were canceled, right? Things like contact tracing, because I think South Korea was actually did it really well, and they weren't giving out necessarily mandates, but they were doing contact tracing and things like that. I think it would have worked out a lot better. But the problem is that the government is so tied to corporations that if you were to give more to the people as far as their material conditions, that will put an idea in their head. Well, if the government can do this for me now, then what makes me?
It would have set a precedent. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the Biden administration, on behalf of their owners, wanted people to go back to work and pay their bills. So there you go. We certainly should. If we had paid people to stay home for 3 or 4 months, and say, hey, we're going to go through a period of uncomfortability where you're going to be isolated, everybody free Netflix or whatever it is, that we have a very serious pandemic on our hands, and we're going to do everything that we can to eliminate it right now. And one of the biggest things that we could do to do that is stay home, and we will pay you to stay home. Then I think, we would have had a much better outcome in terms of deaths and contagion. That wasn't the plan. The plan was get people back to work as soon as possible, and we see how that worked out.
Yeah, but it wouldn't even have been 3 or 4 months. It would have been like 8 weeks. That's it. Just 8 weeks, 2 months. And the crazy part is like, if you're paying people to stay home, then they wouldn't have to go, well, I need to go back to work. That wouldn't have been a driver.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they wouldn't need to. And it's like, oh, well, my rent is in mortgage is canceled for 2 months. Okay. You guys are going to give me food stamps to be able to get food? All right. You guys are going to give me a voucher or waiver to get DoorDash, Uber Eats, or Postmates? Okay. But, and the thing is, like, we could dump $4 trillion into the markets, but we can't dump $4 trillion into the pockets of everyday Americans. It's like, come on now. Like, we could have did so much better. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go into tangent.
Well, it's true. It's true. Where does our money go? Our money goes to the military. Over half of our discretionary budget goes into quote unquote defense. And, we certainly could have canceled student debt for everybody. It's not again, people need to wake up to the priorities of the duopoly, and the priorities of the duopoly are not the health and safety of the American public. They are the profits of the ownership class. That's it.
Absolutely. One of my final questions is, would you ever be a campaign manager again?
So I wouldn't say yes, I wouldn't say no. The role of a campaign manager is really an accountability piece. It's knowing what goes on with all aspects of the campaign, hopefully at all times in real time, so that you can, make decisions that are in alignment with the goals. But it's a 24/7 job. There literally was no downtime for me for an entire year on the campaign. Well, not a year, I guess 11 months on the campaign. There was really no downtime. It is very physically grueling. It is being a campaign manager at this level is very destructive to personal dynamics. Like, your life is going to be disruptive. There were some very positive things. There were also some things where I was like, man, it's almost a no-win situation, because in a crushing defeat, and we don't think that this was a crushing defeat. We think there were a lot of things going against us. The Democratic Party came out hard. Our vote totals were certainly not what we were hoping for. We have some reasons that we think are behind that. But it's an accountability piece, and you just kind of got to keep your eyes on all things at all time, and there's no downtime. But there are a lot of good things that come out of it. So it would have to be the right thing for me. But right now I am in the running to be the treasurer for the National Green Party right now. So we're re-electing a new members of the steering committee, which the treasurer is one of. And so I have been encouraged to apply for that. And I will, do my best at that job to try and help the Green Party be a better party in the ways that it can be. If somebody offers me, like, Butch has asked me to help with his team as he makes a run for governor of California. So I'm, considering what my role could be there. But, as I was telling you before we started here, I work a full-time job. I still have a full-time job. And so I ran a campaign as well as being a candidate here in my own right, which I essentially had to hand off to my own campaign team while I picked up the campaign reins for Jill, and then also trying to do other full-time work so that I can actually, pay my bills and have health insurance. And it was a lot. It was really a lot. I would want to, if I was going to do another campaign manager thing, I want it to be in such a way that I could actually quit the job that I have right now. And that's not going to happen unless I can get a campaign management job with health insurance, and most campaign manager jobs, most campaign staffing jobs don't come with health insurance, so we'll see what happens. There was good and bad with the experience, more good than bad. But it was very challenging. It was a challenging experience.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for that. And my last question is, what upcoming projects or events are you working on?
Well, I think the big thing that we're working on right now, as I said, that Jill and members of the campaign team and some other of our allies that we have, picked up along the way, are really working on a public effort to move towards days of action to highlight the nuclear danger that we are in, the danger of the threat of nuclear war right now. As I said, it's greater than it's ever been. I think, it's got to be the highest priority and make sure the American people understand the threat that we are under right now. And so whatever we can do to organize days of action, general strike days, it's been, kind of put on the table. Should we be asking for a couple of days work stoppage to essentially stop the war machine? When I lived in Albuquerque in the mid 2000s, there was an organization called Stop the War Machine. When I think that's a really good title right now, is that we've got to stop the war machine, or we're all toast. And this goes back to my roots as an activist, because I got into politics 35 years ago as a war protester for the Desert Storm War, our first engagement with Iraq around Kuwait. So that's very near and dear to my heart, and I think is a major mission of the Green Party is to get ceasefires and to denuclearize. So whatever attention we can bring to that, that's what we're working on right now. And then efforts to grow the Green Party to be stronger, more flexible, more accommodating to a diversity of people, which I think has been a criticism in the past. And so those are the things that are on the table right now.
Yeah, definitely. Now, just to ask, I know we are definitely over time, but there is a couple questions on Rockfin that a viewer has asked. Do you have time for that or no?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to share this really quick because I want to make sure that I get this as fast as possible. Thank you very much for being very generous with your time. So here's from Roger Meadows. He says a few things. How was it Diane Sayre of LaRouche was able to get on the ballot statewide for senator, but Joe wasn't, when people know of the Green Party more than LaRouche?
Well, first of all, Diane was local and running in one state, whereas we were coming off the tail of, actually not even off the tail, we were involved in multiple efforts all the way across the country. It was a still, in April and May, we were still a very small campaign. So, this is when I spoke to, I don't want to make excuses. I think it's great that Diane was able to get 70,000 signatures, but probably something that she had been working on for a long time in terms of building up the volunteer base that she needed in order to go out and do that work. And quite frankly, the Green Party of New York had not done that. And then the campaign had not done that either, because we were only a couple months into being a campaign by the time, New York was on the table for us. New York was very, very early in the cycle. I'm glad Diane was able to do that. I don't know what she's like as a candidate, but certainly was a feat for her to get on the ballot.
All right. So he says, okay, Jason, in the states of Arkansas, Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Illinois, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, and the Dakotas, Nevada.
I'm not sure, more or less emphasis on party. Less emphasis on party. I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Yeah, it's more emphasis on party or pushing Green Party and platform citizen-initiated constitutional amendments, not as citizen-led laws, just for them to be repealed by the government without having to ask you first, unlike they would have if you pushed as amendments. He says in the states where votes don't have the ability to place their own amendments on the ballot, and it's in all these different states. It says from poorest to most expensive, we can run candidates independent and green to get our candidates into state legislators to force a vote on placing legislative preferred constitutional amendments on the ballot for ratification by the electorate, allowing voters to place their own initiative amendments onto ballots to ratify it into their own amendments. Cynthia Brown of the Ohio-led coalition's End Qualified Immunity as a citizen-initiated constitutional amendment, not a law, looks like she's on the third base and winning against Ohio Attorney General and Secretary of State for the 26th ballot. We need to get behind initiatives like these while starting ones not already stated in this on all hands on deck moment. The fight is in the states via direct democracy, not national via president.
Well, let me just say, because that is honestly, that's a lot right there.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. I very much support the initiative process. And as we saw, the citizens, I think citizen-led initiatives secured abortion rights in a number of states, despite Trump being elected. And I think that's a good thing. Not all states, and I think only 24 or 25 states have a ballot initiative process. So the question then is I think this is as somebody who has worked as a board member of here in Washington State, a group called Whole Washington. We have been trying to get our healthcare bill, which is essentially a single payer healthcare bill, but at a state level through the state legislature. And we've also been trying to do it as an initiative process. Now, again, it depends on what your state you're in, and it depends on what the actual initiative process is. Yes, you have to build up a base of volunteers who are supportive of this idea. You have to go and collect signatures. So if you can build up a volunteer base to do that, I say do it. That's great. I don't know that is necessarily the Green Party focus, because we are, we support ranked choice voting as a party. We support Medicare for all as a party. I don't know that the party is or has been in a position where we could support efforts to do this, that, or the other initiative in various states. Some local state Green parties have been involved in that, but in terms of a national campaign, that really was not the focus of the Jill Stein campaign. So in terms of the Green Party itself, could we be better positioned to support initiative processes? At the national level, sure, we can, and we should. But again, it's only half the states that have initiative processes, and I think working in other states to get them initiative processes. But again, that's part of state constitutions. So how do it's a very long process to get enough people elected within a state legislature to change a state constitution so that they even have a process. I don't think any of these things are things that we shouldn't be working towards, but there are no quick fixes here.
Of course. And the last things he says is also in regards to Israel. Let's start bringing our Congress members and senators up on charges by filing with our local U.S. Attorney Office. HHS Secretary can give federal waivers to states who wish to pursue their own single-payer healthcare plan. Let's push Bobby Kennedy.
Well, I'm well aware of what can be done to get federal waivers for, Ro Khanna actually has had a bill to try and get Congress to let states have waivers so that they can create their own single payer systems. This stuff's all been on the table. Getting it passed is another story. And that's when you find out that, when they were about to bring CalCare up for a vote in California, the health insurance companies dumped $1 million in a literal day, dumped $1 million into preventing that effort. And then they ended up not even bringing it to the floor as a vote. I was in conversation with Amar Shergill, who was the chair of the Progressive Caucus in California. And he was furious about this. And he said, we went from having the votes to pass CalCare in California to not having the votes to pass it within 24 hours because they dumped $1 million into the California state legislature to prevent it from happening. So unless we get some kind of public financing of elections, unless we get something that says, we're not going to take lobbyist money, these things are they're almost dead in the water, which is a lot of why I understand many people are like, well, we need to abandon electoral politics and move towards taking care of ourselves and our own communities. I think we need to keep fighting in electoral politics, but I also think the timeline is so short right now to deal with climate change that we also have to start within our communities working on how we're going to protect each other when, my personal feeling is our timeline is short. Like we're going to have global societal collapse here in 5 to 10 years. And I may be being optimistic about that. We've got wars, we've got climate really going off the rails in a way that it hasn't, it's the global temperatures are accelerating. I think we're going to have mass climate refugees here in a few years. I mean, we're already starting to have them in some places. We're going to have, vast tracts of arable land not being functional anymore because they're either under drought conditions or, they've been flooded away. Depending upon where you are. I think the climate is changing in front of our eyes. I was up in Alaska when did I go? Middle of September, I went to the Alaska Federation of Natives conference. Coastal communities in Alaska are being devastated right now because of glacial ice melt. I mean, they're literally being flooded out over and over and over again because of glacial ice melt. So, I don't think anything is predictable or stable right now. And I do think that there is a very real need for communities to start figuring out how they can protect each other because we cannot count on the government to protect us.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the solutions that I was going to ask you about, but you answered it for me. Yeah, I completely agree. And, that's what we have to start doing. This is why we're doing mutual aid in our own communities now,
Yeah.
because we have to save us. So definitely. You have been more than generous with your time. I appreciate being here. And it was also really cool working. Essentially you were my boss, so you were a good boss. So I appreciate it. And look,
I hope I was a good boss.
yeah. Well, also there's going to be I don't want to say conference, but it's going to be a meeting of the minds. And I think it's in February.
February 22nd, right here in Seattle with Shama and Workers Strike Back. Yeah, there's going to be, a sort of like, where does the left go from here to build a solidarity movement? Which is, and Jill is going to be speaking there, and of course, this is my hometown, so I'll be in attendance. We're also trying to do the same thing within the Green Party, so it's sort of a parallel effort that I hope at some point will converge to figure out, how do we build a real resistance? I mean, we really need a solidarity resistance movement to challenge the duopoly. As long as the duopoly is in charge of our country and essentially the world, I don't want to understate the impact that America's politics has on the world. So I say, the duopoly is in charge of our country, but they're also somewhat in charge of the world. But as long as that system is still in place, we are not going to see progress on climate. We are not going to see progress on foreign policy. We need to move to an era of cooperation. This is why I'm very interested to see the rise of BRICS as a challenge to American hegemony. That is not anti-American. That actually is a matter of preservation of humanity. I think we have to have some serious understanding that we cannot have a monopolar world where our duopoly is essentially in charge and being funded by all of the industries that are going to kill us, and that have been killing us, slowly over decades and more rapidly now. I'm anti-American in the sense that I don't think America is functional right now. America needs to be functional, and it will not be in the ways that are needed while the duopoly is in charge. So whatever we can do to move beyond that, I'm for it.
All right. Thank you so very much, Jason Call, a teacher, and has come through to let us know what is going on and what the hell actually happened. Thank you so very much for this post-mortem debrief.
Yeah, thank you again, and thank you for being an important part of the campaign. And I really look forward to working with you in the future. So appreciate it, and wish you the best as we move forward.
Definitely, thank you. You too, and hopefully I didn't give you that much of a headache during the campaign.
No, it was great. It was great to have you on the team. Very much so.
Thank you so very much, and I'll talk to you on the interwebs.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks. So that was Jason Call, former campaign manager for the Jill Stein 2024 campaign. What you guys think? I think it was a good analysis, especially about what was happening on the outset. And to be honest with you, I really do think that when it comes to the post-election, a lot of us in left independent media, and I say the left independent media that's on the left, we all knew this turnout was coming. We were not surprised because we knew that there's a vacillation between the Democrats and Republicans. So when the Republicans mess up, people go to the Democrats. When the Democrats mess up, they go to the Republicans. Because ultimately, it is a game that's being waged by the corporate dictators. So here's what they do. they play hot potato with you. When it starts to get too hot in one hand, you got to switch to the other. And then when it starts to get too hot with one hand, then they got to switch to the back. And this is what they do. They just hand you off. Hand you off. That's all they do, right? Because they know if they can give you the illusion of choice, it is easy for them to maintain the same system. It gets more difficult when you add a third hand, right? So then if you can't do these and you have to do a third hand now, well, then it's harder to control 3 parties than it is to control 2 parties, because 2 parties gives you the illusion of choice. But then if you add in a third, that means it's going to be harder for you to control that third party, because now you have 3 different parties to control. And so you have to have a fake opposition. But if you have a real opposition, well, then that takes the power out of your hands. And then if you add a 4th hand, well, it just makes it even more difficult. A 5th hand, it makes it even further difficult. And so I see the game as it's played. And I hope you do too, because the issue is that this is why it is deeply important for us to get money out of politics. Now, I said this the Sabbath before, and I'll say it again. I honestly don't think we'll get money out of politics until a revolution actually happens. And the revolution starts with you expanding your mind and knowing, number one, how this system works, and number two, that the answers and the solutions of what we can do in order to change the system, starting from the personal level and growing out, expanding collectivism into the rest of the country. Because once you start to expand in collectivism, then that starts to become the culture of the system. Because once you start having more of a collectivist culture, because we had more of a collectivist culture back then, and then because of capitalism, it sucked it away. It just said, nope, no more collectivism. We're going to do more individualistic. The thing is that we're going to try to put collectivism back into the system, so then we end up going back to what we should have done at the turn of the Great Depression, which is should have had another revolution. But those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it. And the corporate dictators, they knew history, and they did not want us to go to a point of where the people actually had the power. So yeah, let's get to a point where we start to have more collectivist mindsets with each other. We actually have the answers. We just need to do it. And it's easier said than done, especially within a system that holds us down. But you don't have to try to lift the entire world. I just need you to lift one rock. And then that person lifts a rock, and that person lifts a rock, and that person lifts a pebble, and that person lifts a little bit of a pebble, and that person lifts, a bigger rock. But the thing is, it's like, by the time you look around, if 1,000 people all have rocks in their hands, and then they all place it in a pile, then that's when you start to get a mountain. So, with that being said, did you like the stream? Go ahead and give a like. Thank you very much. Appreciate it so very much for that. And thank you so very much to Jason Call for joining me. It was a great conversation to have. Now, let's get into the chat. And let's see. Do I have any Rumble rants? Let's check and see on that. I don't know if I do. but we can check. Looks like we're good on the Rumble side. All right. And let me see. All right. We already read Rockman, so we're good there. Let's get into the rest of y'all. All right. So we have Miguel H coming in saying, peace. Good to see you, Miguel. Nice to have you in here. We have John Kemper saying peace, love, and solidarity. Good to see you, John Kemper, a.k.a. Adam Bashir, a.k.a. Blue Marble, jumping into the chat. We have Amy coming in saying, help, I'm out. Oh, you're talking about the cat. Yeah. We all love the kitties here. We love the kitties. Jacqueline says, hey, everyone. Good to see you, Jacqueline. Cherry Connolly says, greetings, JB and comrades. Nice to have you. Colin said, question for Jason. What outreach was done to work on the pandemic advocacy groups? Were there attempts to speak to journalists covering the pandemic? Why was the pandemic minimized in campaign appearances? Yeah, that's a really good question. Of course, just, you know, a lot of people who didn't do their research, didn't know that the Stein campaign was also against mandates, and also wanted to investigate what was being done during the pandemic and what both the Trump and Biden administration did wrong. I think that's a worthy cause as well. So, yeah. I hope that answers your question, at least a little bit. Thank you very much. ACAB includes Ice and Border Patrol says hi to all the peeps, Terry Connolly and Jacqueline to be specific. We have Zoe saying cat. Zoe. We have Brittany says my entire life is going to instantly and magically improve on January 20th. I will quickly become wealthy. Republicans will finally be happy every single day for the rest of our lives. No more anger and hatred. You know, that's actually a question I would love to ask Republicans, MAGA, is you got your guy. Let's say hypothetically, we get rid of all taxes because ultimately they love cutting taxes, right? Okay, we get rid of all the taxes. So what happens to all the services that people need? What happens to the roads, the bridges, the water? Because we already know that they want to get rid of the Department of Education, right? And the Democrats aren't helping anything out because they basically just stand back and allow it to happen through their ineptitude. So what is the ultimate fantasy for somebody who is on the right? Because I think they'll say, well, everybody has their own ownership of their home, house, land. Everything will be privatized. If everything is privatized, if you privatize everything, is that going to leave room for everyone to have things privatized? Like, how is that going to work out? What is a conservative utopia? Because ultimately, whenever I think about a conservative utopia, how is that going to work out when it's only going to leave a very small few people at the top? And then everybody else is going to be essentially servants of the rest. And by servants, I'm being very generous. Because I don't see how that's a benefit to everybody to have I don't see how that's the benefit for everyone collectively, equitably, and egalitarian way. I don't see it. Maybe that's a conversation for a conservative on this channel. Maybe I should have somebody who's conservative on to talk about it. Sakudo says, thank you, JB. Thank you very much, Sakudo. Janice Anderson says, per exit polls in 2016, Trump got more cross-party votes than Clinton. He counted 12% of his vote from registered Democrats, while Clinton only got 11% from registered Republicans. And this goes to show that Trump actually ran to the left on Clinton, to the left of Clinton during 2016 when it came to things like war. He talked about how, Obamacare was a disaster, which Obamacare was a right-wing healthcare plan. And you literally have Donald Trump calling a Heritage Foundation think tank plan a disaster. All because, and my question though is, would Trump have said it if it was created by a Republican? See, this goes into the partisanship. But, looking at somebody like Donald Trump, honestly, he ran to the left of Hillary Clinton on some issues. And honestly, that's what helped him. And it's funny because if Donald Trump can run to the left of Hillary Clinton on issues, and a lot of people also who supported Donald Trump in 2016 were actually Bernie supporters in 2016 as well. So if Bernie had actually won, would Donald Trump have gotten those supporters? Boy, I tell you. DZ Dali says Biden is infidel human being. He's a lot of things. Some things I can't say on this channel. Doug Zilla says the left needs to start its own version of a free state project. Yeah, I honestly think that we should start our own Project 2025, or really it should be a Project 30. I think the left, and I'm not talking about Democrats, I'm talking the left, needs to start like a Project 30. Like, we need to have our own think tanks and stuff. But the problem is, if you start to do that, the Democrats and Republicans would band together and they would send the DOJ after a true anti-capitalist think tank. They would literally come up with excuses in order to be able to tear it apart. Y'all don't think, if you don't believe me, look at a lot of the left-wing groups throughout history. Jacqueline says, I'm sure billionaires will be annoyed at losing all these customers if we had a nuclear war, possibly the only halfway good reason for the mega wealthy to exist. Yeah, unfortunately, somebody is going to try to make money off of the cleanup from a nuclear fallout. They're going to try to monetize cleanup from nuclear fallout so that they can make billions from the destruction of hundreds of thousands of people. They're going to paywall us into oblivion. That's, I know this sounds crazy, but I can see them doing that. For real. Let me see. And I'll do one more. All in Same says, free and equal debates content was wonderful. The artists may have been better received at the beginning and end, and perhaps an intermission. I found the format disjointed. Thank you. Okay, thank you so very much. And let's get to the next subject. before we do that, let's get into thanking the patrons so that we can do that. Make sure that we thank them. Why? Why not? So thank you so much to the patrons on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this vital work. Here are the tiers so that you know what's what. Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, yeah, Jaybefaunters, Comrade, Solidarity, and JB members. And thank you to all new members. I didn't get the check before the show today. My apologies. But any new members that we have, thank you very much for tuning in and supporting the channel. It means the world to me. All right. And also, if you guys like to, my channel is demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. So what are we talking about next? Oh my goodness. Let's get into this. Oh, above the law. This is going to, I can't wait to get into this with y'all. This is going to be interesting because I was looking at this and I said, hold up, wait a minute. Did this dude really just do what I thought he did? Did he just lie? So let's get into this, shall we? No one is above the law. No one? Well, at least we thought that no one was above the law. But according to Joe Biden, he said, up, 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 up. My boy is. Let's get into this for y'all because this is going to be interesting. Let's get into this. Oh, Lord. A horrible part where I actually had her pause, but let's give a listen.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one 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 is above the law.
I can't play that music. Oh my goodness. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Well, what do you know? Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. Let's continue.
Oh, son of a bitch.
No one.
Well, apparently Hunter is above the law. So recently, actually on Sunday evening, a lot of us were in bed. I know I was in bed. I said, ain't no news coming out tonight, right? And then it happened. And a lot of us, some of us were not extremely surprised, but some people were, because the Democrats constantly said that nobody is above the law. Well, let's give it a read, shall we? So Matt Visor says, breaking, President Biden pardons his son, Hunter. Well, let's give it a read. And let me enlarge it just for y'all so that we can read it together. Statement from President Joe Biden. Said, today I signed a pardon for my son, Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision-making and I kept my word even as I had watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser. People are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions, but pay them back subsequently with interest and penalties, are typically given non-criminal resolutions. It is clear that Hunter was treated differently. The charges in his case came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. Then carefully negotiated plea deal agreed to by the Department of Justice unraveled in the courtroom, with a number of political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure in the process. It continues, it says he had the plea deal held. It would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. And that is wrong. There has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they have tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. My entire career, I have followed this simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. Okay, Joe. Says they'll be fair-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but I have wrestled with this. I have also believed raw politics has infected the process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice. Once I made this decision this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president will come to this decision. So here's the thing. Before I get into my thoughts, let's get into why Hunter Biden was being pardoned for. I think that is part of, what people need to know. So it says what Hunter Biden did, what did Hunter Biden do, and what is a presidential pardon? So it says Hunter Biden was awaiting sentencing later this month in 2 federal cases. In June, he became the first child of a sitting U.S. president to be criminally convicted in a case related to his gun ownership. He was found guilty by a jury in Delaware of 3 charges for lying about his drug use on a form when buying a handgun. He was also awaiting sentencing after pleading guilty in September in a federal tax case that centered on whether he paid enough tax from 2016 to 2019. The 9 charges included a failure to file and pay his taxes, tax evasion, and filing a false return. He faces up to 25 years in prison in the gun case and 17 years in the tax case, though he was likely to get much shorter tariffs and to serve the 2 sentences concurrently, the experts told the New York Times. And so it's talks about a presidential pardon, right? So the U.S. Constitution decrees that the president has broad power to grant reprieves and pardons to offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. In this case, the president's full unconditional pardon is usually sweeping. It covers any potential federal crimes the younger Biden may have committed during a period of more than 10 years from January 2014 to December of 2024. That spans a period beyond Hunter Biden's tax and gun offenses and dates back to the year he joined the board of Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company, while his father, the then vice president, had a key role in U.S. policy towards Kyiv. This means that the coup that happened in 2014 in Ukraine, that possibly Joe Biden had a role in. Of course, the people like Victoria Nuland and people like the late John McCain and others, meaning that Hunter Biden, if he had any type of dealings within Ukraine, which could come out, he will be pardoned for. And this is what makes it egregious, because everybody said nobody is above the law. And look, here's my thing. I am an abolitionist. I believe in restorative justice. I believe that our justice system is created in such a way where it goes against people who are working and marginalized, and particularly Black and brown people. And so the justice system was created for people like a Hunter Biden. And when you look at Hunter Biden and his incessant drug use, which I firmly believe that drug addiction is a health issue, not a criminal issue. But Joe Biden believes it's a criminal issue. And so the egregious things that Hunter Biden has done, those can be pardoned. Those can be excused. But the hundreds of thousands of people who are sitting in prison right now, including someone who was in my family that died in prison, that wasn't enough to reverse things in order to free them so that they can have the same opportunities that a Hunter Biden has. This is nasty work. My issue isn't that Joe Biden pardoned his kid. My issue is that Joe Biden is a hypocrite. He is a liar. He is a swindler and a cheater. Let me share this.
With regard to the question regarding the family, I'm extremely proud of my son, Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know. And I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
You heard that, right? Let's go back for good measure.
I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
He said he will not pardon him. He lied. He lied. That's exactly what happened. You can spin it however you want, but that's exactly what happened. That was a lie. Because ultimately, Joe Biden is only tough on crime when it comes to people that look like me. Or he's only tough on crime with people of a certain income level. He's not tough on crime when it comes to his kid. He's not tough on crime on that. There is hypocrisy here. Let's go back through in time.
There's a second thing that we all have agreed upon, and that is, unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now, not out of a liberal instinct for love, brother, and humanity, although I think that's a good instinct, but for simple, pragmatic reasons. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets.
I'm sorry. What was that about lying on a form to buy a gun? There's also allegations of sexual misconduct as well from Hunter Biden, which shows that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But and just ask Tara Reid. But predators? Let's finish.
That society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people.
Those people, like your son. You want me to think that about people that look like me. Meanwhile, while your son, as an adult, during this time, Hunter was an adult at this time, was kicking rocks. You know what I mean? At this time. And you don't have that same smoke for him. But you got all the smoke in the world for anybody that has a little extra melanin in their skin. You have all of the wherewithal to pass a bill, to co-author a bill that would have sweeping implications in putting people like me in prison for a health issue. Nasty work, Joe.
Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't.
And yet, one of those people is your son. And you don't want to do that because you have empathy and care for your son, but you don't have empathy and care for the people that look like me. You don't have care for the people that look like my own. Y'all said no one is above the law, and yet you lied. And now you have Democrats making excuses for Biden, Freudian slip, pardoning his kid. And make no mistake, if you're a Trump supporter, you guys would be making the same excuse if Donald Trump were to pardon Ivanka or Jared or Don Jr. Y'all would be making the same excuse. Because it all is partisanship. My thing is, it's like, if you're going to have that type of empathy for your son, why don't you have the type of empathy for all other people who are going through what your son has went through? Shout out to African Stream for this. They said Biden pardons son 2 months after execution of Black prisoner. 2 months after pleas to pardon a Black prisoner, Marcellus Williams, in the case with contradictions went unheeded. U.S. President Joe Biden granted his son Hunter full and unconditional pardon for offenses committed between January 1st of 2014 and December 1st of 2024. Biden had previously stated he would not pardon his son, emphasizing respect for the judicial process. However, in his first December statement, Biden cited political interference as a factor. What about Marcellus Williams? Marcellus Williams says was a Black prisoner and executed on the 24th of September of this year. Conviction relied on allegedly paid off informants, claims of DNA evidence contamination, and nearly all white jury and the dismissal of 6 prospective Black jurors. Efforts to commute Williams' sentence failed, with both Missouri Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court declining to intervene. On December 1st, U.S. President Joe Biden grants a full unconditional pardon to his son, Hunter Biden, for offenses committed between January 1st of 2014 and December 1st of 2024, despite previously claiming to respect judicial independence. Hunter Biden faced sentencing on 12th of December for federal gun charges related to lying in firearms application about his addiction, and on the 16th of December for tax evasion for up to 42 years in prison. So could have pardoned Marcellus Williams, but he let Marcellus Williams die. And so a lot of people are making excuses. Let's start off with number one. Well, this is the only one I'm going to make, but you guys can go on Twitter and see the rest. But here is Charlemagne the God.
Hunter was singled out because he broke the law. He was singled out because he had an illegal gun and tax evasion charges, not because he was the president's son. And I just want Democrats to stop acting like they are on this moral high ground politically when they have shown us they're not, whether it's skipping the primary process when Biden stepped down and things like Biden pardoning his son. Stop acting like y'all the pure party and Republicans aren't. And it also shows me elected officials can do whatever they want as long as they have the political will and courage to do it.
Here's the thing. Democrats are saying, well, Donald Trump pardoned all these different people, so we should be able to do the same. The issue is don't be a hypocrite. I mean, that's what Joe Biden is. And now you're seeing how much like the Republicans that Joe Biden is, because Joe Biden is literally doing what Donald Trump would do. That's the issue. It's the hypocrisy. It's the hypocrisy that he is allowing his son to get off scot-free, whereas you have people who are still in prison for lesser charges, and those prison sentences are based on the 1994 crime bill that Joe Biden authored. If Joe Biden was actually remorseful, and people look at me crazy for this, Joe Biden would repeal the 94 crime bill as president. But he won't. He won't. But he'll pardon his own son. And some of these charges are probably based, some of these charges against Hunter Biden are probably based on the 1994 crime bill. So the crime bill he started, that he helped author, years later, 30 years later, is now going to put his son in the clinker, and yet he can save his son because he's president. But he's not going to do anything else for anybody else who was affected by the same law that he had helped author. The same law that was signed into law by Bill Clinton. So in the United States, some people are above the law. Look, George Carlin said it. It's a big club and you ain't in it. Some people are above the law. And now you have Democrats making excuses for it, when in reality, what did Joe Biden should have done? Joe Biden should have, honestly, if he was going to pardon his son, I would have did a pardoning spree. I would have did it. I would have pardoned people like Mumia Abu-Jamal. I would have pardoned Leonard Peltier. You are literally a lame duck president. You have no more political future. Go big or go home. And he's not. He's not at all. So people who are saying that, oh, well, that was his kid, I would pardon my kid too. A lot of us would, but don't be a hypocrite. And yeah, I honestly do think that Donald Trump would have did the same for his own kids. Speaking of Donald Trump, he said Donald Trump reacts to the pardoning of his son, Hunter Biden. Donald Trump says, does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the January 6 hostages who have now been in prison for years, such an abuse and miscarriage of justice? Now, is Donald Trump going to pardon them? My question is, because, look, Donald set himself up. Is he going to pardon him? It'll be hilarious if Donald Trump doesn't. That would be funny. But make no mistake, if it were Don Jr. or Ivanka, or hell, his youngest now, Barron, is now an adult. So what if Barron did some dumb stuff? And yeah, he's 18 now, so of course, he's bound to do something dumb. We all did at that age. But do you honestly think that he wouldn't pardon his kids? He wouldn't pardon Tiffany? Yeah, he would. A lot of parents would. But don't sit here and talk about law and order when your kid does something egregious and then you want to pardon them, but you don't want to do anything else for anybody else. Excuse me. Especially for people who have non-violent drug offenses and things like that. But yeah, I can see Donald Trump totally doing exactly what Joe Biden did. So Donald Trump has no room to talk. And plus, he has pardoned people who have done wrong things too. Right? There was something else I wanted to see. I wanted to share this as well. Look, I want to share this because I wanted to hear this with fresh ears. and get my raw reaction to this, but let's play this too.
I respect it as a parent. I understand why he would do it, but I wonder to understand why lie about it for so long.
I'd stop calling it a lie.
Okay, why repeatedly say you're not going to and you do? And secondarily, for the
Hold up, Whoopi, hang on, wait.
Why lie about it for so long?
I'd stop calling it a lie.
Okay, why?
It was a lie, Karen. It was a lie. He said he wasn't, and then he reneged on it. How are you going to say that, oh, well, Joe Biden didn't lie about not pardoning his son? He said it in 4K in front of our faces, and then he reversed. He reversed. And you're going to say he didn't? He didn't lie? When someone tells you something knowingly, and it is the opposite of what they told you, with intention, that is a lie. Joe Biden lied. Whoopi Goldberg, you're supposed to be our elders. You're supposed to set the example. You're not setting the example right now.
Repeatedly say you're not going to and you do. And secondarily, for the part of this country, half of it that doesn't support Biden, doesn't know him personally, doesn't get to have phone calls, and they're just looking at a system that seems like it only benefits the people who are in power.
I'm going to say,
what precedent does that set?
Well, here's what it says. It's a precedent for all of us to open our eyes because we've elected someone who is in a similar situation, who didn't have a drug problem, who knew what he was doing, who clearly stood and said, I can do this. And he did it. So I think for many, many reasons, this is very different than any other situation that we have ever dealt with.
Whoopi Goldberg, two wrongs don't make a right. Oh, he did it. He did it for his people, so we can do it for ours. Two wrongs don't make a right. And on top of it, he's a hypocrite. If you're going to pardon Hunter Biden, fine, pardon him, but also pardon all these political prisoners, pardon all these people who are in for nonviolent drug offenses, repeal the 94 crime bill, say you're sorry and apologize to the Black community, and hell, while you're at it, push for reparations for American freedmen. Go all the way. Apologize for the busing. Apologize for your friendship with Strom Thurmond. Apologize for it all. Clear your mind, clear your conscience, Joe. But he don't want to apologize to Tara Reid, do a formal apology and admit that you did what you did to her. Do everything. You're sundowning anyway, it's apparent. So you might as well let your soul rest. But now you have people like Whoopi Goldberg coming to bat for you. Making excuses for wrongdoing. If you want to be restorative in your justice, then be restorative in your justice for everybody, not a select few. I am all for restorative justice. If my family member had done something wrong, would I pardon them? Yep. But I also wouldn't have authored the 94 crime bill. I also wouldn't be so devoted to giving billions of dollars to the police to assist in the mass incarceration that's happening across this nation. But that's what people who are in the upper echelons of our society do. People who are constantly saying, well, I would have done the same thing. They're not focusing on the hypocrisy. Let's continue. Because I think it's hilarious how people are now saying that nobody's above the law, but then they said, up. Hold on, wait a minute.
Accepted his sentence.
He is not pardoning his son, which he could do. These are federal charges.
Right.
He is not doing that. He is not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country.
Yeah.
And then it is, I mean, if you want to know if he believes it, you could actually see what is happening with his own son.
The president accepted his sentence.
He is not pardoning his son, which he could do. These are federal.
Oh my goodness. Ain't that cute? Ain't that cute? I found this to be hilarious. Those of you who have watched The Dark Knight Rises. I'm sorry, not The Dark Knight Rises, The Dark Knight. Right? The Christopher Nolan Batman series. Take a look at this. Yep. Take a look. Look at it. I mean, how to get away with it. Have your daddy be president, right? And like I said, the issue is it is his hypocrisy. There's a video I want to show y'all, but it is too raw for the tube. But I'm telling you right now, it is hilarious. It involves Elmo and it involves a white substance and very, very series of antics that I'm looking at right now. But yeah. And so people can talk about oh my gosh. People can talk about how, Hunter Biden is, this is a different situation. It's not really, because there's many people in the same situation that Hunter Biden could be pardoned for. When did I say this? I said this, this was June of earlier this year. I said, in Paul Mooney's voice, Hunter Biden has the complexion for the protection. Did I misspeak? Actually, let me retweet that again. Oh my goodness, that is, yep. He definitely got the complexion for the protection. And let's finish it off with Nico House on Hotspot. Take it away, Nico.
Joe Biden has announced that he will be pardoning Hunter Biden, his son, after he was found guilty of both gun charges and tax evasion charges. Now, this is after Joe Biden himself said that he would respect due process, he would respect the decisions of the jury, and he would allow the process to flow, and whatever happens, happens.
Will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes,
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
yes. And I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No. So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no. It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
And this isn't some small issue, ladies and gentlemen, because if Hunter Biden went to his hearing sentence in December, he would have been facing a maximum of 25 years. Now, no one believes that he would have actually served 25 years in prison, but he would have served some time. And now Joe Biden has made it so not only will Hunter Biden avoid time in prison, but he will avoid accountability altogether. Now, isn't this the exact type of behavior that liberals claim Trump was capable of doing and would do if the circumstances were reversed? Didn't liberals say that if Trump won, it would be he who stepped on democracy and due process and would use his political influence to get outcomes favorable to him and his family and only his supporters? Y'all don't got nothing to say about this? Now, if this was you or me or our families, we would be getting our affairs in order because we would be going to jail in about 2 months like Hunter Biden was about to do if we were convicted of what he was convicted of. But once again, liberals get caught projecting all the hypocritical shenanigans that they are actually guilty of committing. What's crazy about this is that he is justifying his decision to pardon his own son of crimes he was absolutely guilty of because he believes the process was tainted by raw politics. Now, once again, I'm not a Trump fan, ladies and gentlemen, but what happened over the last 3 to 4 years with all the raw politics that interfered with the Trump convictions? Because that's all that was the weaponization of Biden's Justice Department against a political opponent. So in such a situation, would Trump be wrong if he pardoned himself? Or a better question would be, would liberals complain if Trump pardoned himself because of the political interference like Biden is doing right now for Hunter? Of course they would. Just another example of rules for thee, but not for me when it comes to these corrupt, morally bankrupt politicians.
I'm going to be real with you. We all know that both parties play the same way. And yeah. So if you had any type of thought in your mind that maybe, just maybe, we can change the Democratic Party, you got your sign, baby. You got your sign. All right, everybody, give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Let's get into the chat, shall we? All right, let me check the Rumble to see if I get any Rumble rants, and then we can continue on. All right, looks like we are good on the Rumble side. All right. I almost made my voice sound like Stan from Martin. Martin, I like my women old, fat, and ugly. Anyway, so let's share. I did pretty good on it. So let's see. Okay. It says, James, you're confusing conservative with libertarian. Conservatives want low taxes. Libertarians want no taxes. You see it with most of the red states still have state income tax just low. So you'd be calling their bluff because conservatives, Republicans would never do the deed. Okay. Thank you so very much for that. Appreciate it. let's go to the rest of the chat. What y'all got to say about? I meant to do a poll. I was going to put a poll. Shoot. Sorry, guys. I was going to do a poll. Oh well. My apologies, guys. Let me go. Oh, I forgot. I wanted to get this. Roger says we need public financing and ballot measures. Yeah. I wanted to get to that. Doug Zilla says we need an eco-socialist alternative to both BRICS and the American Empire. That's fair. Thank you very much, Roger. Appreciate it. Yes, please hit the like. Rondu says, kept my word. Yeah, you kept your word, right? Yep, absolutely. Let me see. Jacqueline says, Hunter, Joe, and Donald are all part of the club that we're not invited to. Yeah, they wouldn't dare invite us to that. Amy says, a guy like Biden Sr. never had any real sense of right versus wrong. Right was always whatever works best for him. Personally, I type that guy, that type of guy will, of course, raise kids with severe problems. The thing is, it's like, look, a lot of people, you know, go through different things and have severe problems. It's not, you know, it's not an aberration. You know, sometimes, you know, we go through different things and then we end up having some, you know, personal issues. I mean, humans honestly have been using mind-altering substances for thousands of years. That is not above, you know, I mean, hell, I was using one during the stream. It's called caffeine. I think the abuse of it has to deal with a lot of times trauma and things like that, which I agree, like these things need to be medical issues, which we shouldn't be legislating to put people in jail and, you know, for crime and things like that. And we also should be getting rid of the war on drugs, things like that, right? My issue with Joe is really just the hypocrisy that he has all this smoke for people who have these issues and problems. He doesn't want to get rid of the war on drugs. He wants to keep it going. And then once his son becomes someone who is addicted to drugs, when his son does all these bad things that are against the law, and he has said that the rule of law should prevail, and then he pardons his son, but he does not give a pardon to any of the people who have done things like his son. It just it flies in the face of you know being somebody who is consistent. And the thing is like Donald Trump has done the same thing, where he's pardoned, you know, people in his camp that has done bad things, you know, and it's like, you know, the Democrats go against the Republicans for doing that, but yet, you know, you guys don't have that same smoke for Joe Biden, who's doing the exact same thing that Donald Trump did. It doesn't make sense. And so this is the issue. It is the hypocrisy, right? This is why I'm like, okay, well, what about the people who actually didn't do anything wrong, but they were put in prison for just, you know, because of their politics is to your left. People like Mumia Abu-Jamal or Leonard Peltier, right? Why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they going to, you know, they could also do a pardon for somebody like a Julian Assange, even though he is freed, you know, all the charges that you have against him could be dropped, right? Do a pardon for him. This is the issue. Why couldn't you give a presidential pardon to Assata Shakur so she can come back home and be with her family? But you won't give her a presidential pardon because you're not interested. And compared to Hunter Biden, Assata Shakur did nothing wrong. She's being convicted because there is a a concerted effort to take down somebody politically, but ultimately they're trying to use that as a cudgel in order to put her in prison. In reality, Assata Shakur is way more innocent than a Hunter Biden. And this just goes to show that those of us who are Black, particularly a lot of us who are Black American, we are constantly under the thumb of white supremacy. And one of the poster childs for white supremacy are people like Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And they will save their own, but they won't dare to save us because they really don't care, because they are agents of the system. Good to see you, Wadi Pegram. Katie Lewis, part of the RB in Orlando chapter, says there is a lot of folks in prison today because of Biden that he most certainly did not and would not pardon. He is a piece of ish. Absolutely. That's, and that's pretty much the crux of my entire argument. Oh, yeah. Amy says, he's always made my skin crawl ever since he fed Anita Hill to his right-wing pals. Yep. Absolutely. Global Solidarity says the 80s was a lot of booger sugar, lots of new people into country in terms. Predator, he was talking point from party. Yeah. I mean, he got all this smoke for people who were, doing, illegal substances back then, but nobody ever talks, no Democrat ever talks about, pardoning them, the people who were addicted to these substances, largely was pushed on us by the CIA. But that's a whole nother conversation. Meanwhile, Joe Biden got all this smoke for us. Meanwhile, his son was building snowmen in the 90s and early 2000s. Jacqueline says if Biden was truly adamant that he wasn't going to pardon his son, the story would have been killed. Keeping the story alive is just softening the public so that they accept Biden pardoning him. That's a good point, too. Amy says tax evasion is honestly more damaging to society than someone doing the Jolly Green Giant. Yeah, yeah. Rondo, allegedly, Joe Biden still attends Klan rallies in Dover, Delaware. I'm going to say allegedly. Amy says James Baldwin said back in the day that if a child is raised with no limits, as privileged kids often are, they will spend the rest of their lives trying to discover what those limits are. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So, with that being said, I am going to dip out. It is my time. Thank you so very much to everybody for joining in. Thank you so very much to Jason Call for joining for this and being very generous with your time. And also, I will be having some conversations later this week. This weekend on the 7th, I know I was supposed to have him on last week, but because of health, I wasn't able to. But Richard Medhurst will be joining me this Saturday, so we will be having a conversation there. So be sure to tune in for that. And then this Thursday, me, Sabi, and Nick on RBN. We will be at the round table and we will be having a guest, Dr. CBS. So that's going to be a great conversation. And then next week on Tuesday, I have an expert on North Korea coming in. So we'll be talking about that. And we're going to be talking about the interesting turn of events that happened today. I was thinking about talking about it, but due to the sake of time, as well as I want to make sure that I have more of the facts. But yeah, the president of South Korea today tried to declare martial law, and then the South Korean parliament reversed the martial law, and then the South Korean military tried to prevent the South Korean parliament from actually voting to repeal the martial law that the South Korean president put in place. And then because the South Korean parliament actually succeeded, they were actually able to repeal it. And then the army was like, wait a minute, what they did was legal, so we can't. So the situation is still developing to this day, but South Korea right now is on fire, not literally on fire, but politically on fire. And I can't wait to get into that conversation. So it's going to be Hermit Huang, from who is an expert on North Korea, on DPRK. We'll be having a conversation about that. And so that's going to be a really interesting, and a lot of the questions that you guys would like to know about North Korea, whatever questions you guys have, I hope that I formulate all my questions, to be something that you guys are interested in knowing. And so I would like to know more about North Korea and about, their system of government and how their people fare, and how what's going on in South Korea, it doesn't affect them in any way. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation to have next week. So December is going to be a good month for shows, so be sure to tune in. And also, oh, by the way, I forgot. Also, we're raising money for RBN Mutual Aid. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also donate to the RBN Orlando Mutual Aid by going to $ Orlando RBN on Cash App. So we're doing a mutual aid action there. And then on top of that, actually, let me put the link to that in the chat just so that you guys have that there. And then also just let you guys know, of course, we're still raising some funds for Rome so that he can get commissary, and he is, he's faring okay while he's in jail. So let me share the GoFundMe as well, so that you guys, if you guys would like to, you guys can continue to support. Most of the funds went to him, to his lawyer fees. So you guys have that there. So there you have it there. And so, yes, Rondo, he's locked up. I can't say much, but yes. So if you guys would like to assist him in that, please continue to do that, and look out for any updates regarding him. So thank you very much for that. Also, just to let you guys know, I also do answering questions. So if you guys would like to, you guys like any questions answered, I give a video response. So you guys can go to QBounty at qbounty.com/JBFaunt. I will share it here so that you guys can see. I don't think I have any new questions yet. I haven't checked yet though. But I did a video reaction recently. So I had that. There's also one that talks about Bernie Sanders. You guys probably saw that earlier. And then this one is about, pros and cons of having a channel. So I have answered these questions And if you guys would like to, you guys, it's kind of like almost like sending super chats, but then I answer to them personally to you guys. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also ask your questions there. But that's also linked in the description down below too. So thank you very much for that. And I think that's going to be pretty much it. So with that being said, I'm out of here. Well, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it, and do all the things if you got them. I'm not going to, after talking about Hunter Biden, I ain't saying that right now. But if you do got him, or if you don't got him, then watch something funny because joy is revolutionary. Read because reading is fundamental. Oh, yeah. Also, I'll be trying to do these readings on these books later this week, so tune in for that. All right, Presidential, The Will to Change, and The Water in the Spirit, okay? And we'll be getting into those, all right? So, take care, everybody. Mwah, forehead kisses, because finger guns, that's what I do, because I love you. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Deuces, Bruces. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.